right, so what we want to do is just get started with some very, simple, basic, where you're able to create a game board that enables you to sort of know where the person is clicking. And this is also something where we're going to be able to put items on the game board. Now remember, we're going to do lots of different games. Some of these are going to be word games. Some of these are going to be kind of simulated board games. Some of these are moving animation games. So a whole variety of games. But I thought this would be a good start. And just to see, this is where we're going to kind of end up, where we have a board here. And you're going to be able to, when you move over one of the boxes on the board or the map, and you click it, you know what number you're on. So this is just something where you can envision you're going to be creating a board, and maybe you have multiplayers and they move, one of them moves over here and then you move over here and you place armies here and they place armies here, or this is checkers or chess or whatever. So I'm just going to talk about the building of the board. And right now, let me go to this. It's right here. This is going to be a combination of some style tag. All right, so you see we have our setup. Let me minimize that a little bit. All right, so we have our setup. You have your reference to the Jquery file. Then we have a bunch of style tags. And you can do whatever you want with these. You're going to have access to this code. But you can do whatever you want with this. What we have here is we have a body, background of forest green. Then we have a div tag ID game board here. And then all we really have there is we have a background, we have sizing, and then this is the important piece. We have a background URL of an image. So what I want you to do is think about what would you want to have as an image for your game board, and you can put that right here. You just have to have the file on your local computer, and then have background URL have be the file. Background size contain means that it expands the file, or actually it makes sure that the file only fits into the thing, into the size of the div tag. Now that's a pretty big one here, 1200 by 800, right? But if I had a file that was bigger than that, or an image that was bigger than that, then it would go in here. Let me see. I have, I think, anatomy from my operation game, and if I click it, I didn't save that. I didn't save it. So you see here that shows up here as well. So you can put whatever you want in there as your image. So what I want to see you do is create a game board with a specified image. You can make it as big or small as you want. And then in there, we want to create game squares. So right now I have them 10 by 10. So you can see here if I click generate game board, well, okay, so it has, oh, of course, because I specify that. All right, so I have these different game squares up here, and I can make those as big as I want as well. And then I have it where when I hover over one of the game squares, you can see that the cursor turns to the hand, and then the background color is turquoise. And I think that's it for that. So you see here I have a function that says generate game board. So that's why it changed, because I have the game board right here, and I specify that it's going to be a certain size and it's going to use a certain image, right? If I change that to anatomy, it'll change it. But I actually also have a function where I run it and I look and I define, here are the number of squares I want. Here's how high the image should be. I'm sorry, how high the div should be, how wide it should be, what image should I use as my URL for the background. And then it runs this. And this is something where, again, I'm assuming that you've gone through the JavaScript class, so you know what the for loop is. The for loop, we're going to use that a lot to create multiple instances of the same same text or the same tag. So right here, we're creating a div class game square. We're giving it a specific ID so that we can reference each individual game square later on. And then we're also assigning it and saying that on click, we're going to run a function called show square. Okay? And so we run this div tag here, for as many square, whatever our square number is. And our square number, we're defining at 4,000. And so then we have text1, which starts off blank. We're going to have text1 basically add to itself over and over and over again 4,000 times. And then we're going to take that variable, which has 4,000 instances of this div class, or this div with the class of game square, and each one having an individual ID, right? We're going to put that in right here into the HTML of the div game board. All right, so now for those people, this is JavaScript, right? These are setting variables in JavaScript. This is a function in JavaScript. This is a event in JavaScript that runs the function show square over here. This is Jquery, and all it is it gives you a shorthand for being able to reference the game board, the div with the ID game board. This means ID, okay? If I did a period, that would mean a class. And basically you have one ID and you can have as many different classes as you want. But look here, for those people who've just gotten to Java's cascading style sheets, this is where you can change the cascading, style of the game board. So right here I say I want the game board's CSS width to be equal to board width, which is a variable that I set up here. So I just made that 1,000, right? And I make the height 1,000, and I make the background image this image link right here, which is URL, and then all these, if you haven't gone through the JavaScript class, you really need to, because that's where we go into how to use variables, and these are things called, I guess I'm not using any arrays in here. All right, so that's that piece. What I want you to do is I want you to create, in order to get started, all you really need to do is have a div ID game board, and then use the style tag up here, ID game board, and then you put your brackets and put in here size and a background URL image, okay? Then I want you to have a function called generate game board, where you don't have to change all of this. We can deal with that later. We'll deal with that I'll actually probably record it right now, but we'll do it as a separate, let me just cut that. So all I really want to see happen is, all I really want to see is I want you to create these game squares, okay? So we're going to do the HTML and put the text1 in there, right? All this other stuff is not that big of a deal. Well, we need to have our number of squares, right? And so right here, if I click save and I rerun this and I say generate game board, it doesn't change the size, it just adds all of these items, okay? And we want to do that because we also want to have another function that just recognizes the interaction. So if I click on this, I get my alert. That's all we really want to do, because then we can start thinking about, all right, well, what do we want to do with this game? And I think what we're going to start off doing is getting it where we have 2 players, and where one player can click here and make it their spot, and then the other player can click here and make it their spot, maybe change the color and that sort of thing, right? So kind of like a checkers or chess or Stratego or something like that. All right, so what I want you to do is you need to do your basic, your file with your Jquery, then create a div game board, and then I want you to have a button with an on-click event, generate game board, and in here, I just want you to use a for loop to create these game squares, and then paste it in here. Okay, so I'm going to leave this code up here so you can copy it and modify it, but you make it your own. Do whatever background image you want. Remember, the background image has to be local for you. Or actually, that's not true. You can do, if I go right now, I'm not online, but if I go right now, I can find an image and use that here. You just have to have the full, the full image source there. All right, so that's assignment number 1. Create a game board that has game squares.